Hello, Linux fans. Welcome to episode 2 of Destination Linux. Tagline, Dolphins are cool. I'm Rob.
And I'm Rocco.
And today we've got a special guest with us, Dolphin Oracle, one of the developers of MX16 Linux. He'll be spending some time with our latest release. And along with that, we have some Linux news to discuss. We're also going to get into what Rocco's going to do about his daily driver. That along with viewer questions and more on this episode of Destination Linux. Rocco, how are you, man? Merry Christmas.
I'm doing good. Merry Christmas to you. Are you ready?
I guess I'm ready. I've done all my shopping on Amazon and gotten that all out of the way. And you know what I'm worried about, though? I'm kind of worried. I haven't been exactly super nice this year. I've been a little on the naughty side, so I'm worried that I'm going to wake up with either coal or copies of Windows 10 in my stocking.
Oh, my gosh. Which is worse?
Oh, let's see here. I can burn the coal. Well, I could burn the copies of Windows 10.
You could burn the copies of Windows 10.
So what about you? Are you all ready?
I am ready, man. I'm ready in here, so that's all that matters. The rest is just details, so we're good.
Absolutely.
And let me get
ready for right now.
Well, let me get the official countdown. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is.
While you're doing that, I'm going to set up Santa Tracker.
2 days, 5 hours, and 51 minutes until Christmas.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So he's getting the reindeer prime right now.
That's right.
So you know what else I'm ready for?
What are you ready for?
I'm ready for some Linux news. What you got?
Linux news? I got some Linux news, Rob. All right, so we have Budgie has updated their desktop 10.2.9, and it's just a minor bug fixes, but it does come with fixes for HIDPI and some panel and Raven fixes. So, hey, anytime they're going to continue updating it, they could have just, done nothing and waited for the next one to come out, but it's always good to see them update it.
Yep, always. Anytime there's improvements being made and you see that there's activity, that just keeps interest.
Yep. Speaking of updating, or upgrading, maybe, Linux Mint 18.1 put on their blog that you can now upgrade from Linux Mint 18.18 to 18.1. So basically, all you have to do is open the Update Manager, go to Edit, and there will be an extra menu there to say Upgrade to Linux Mint 18.1 Serena. So that makes it easy. Wait,
that makes it easy. That was easy. I love it. Well, I wonder, I'm curious how many people just go ahead and make their upgrade that way. Personally, I probably would try it once, but I always lean to the side of just doing a fresh install, even though it's a pain. But what's your thoughts there?
Well, as far as Linux Mint, they in previous versions didn't have the upgrade pretty much perfected. So I can't speak for this version, but I would agree in past versions I would definitely install it from fresh rather than upgrade. And they had to say in the blog too, upgrade for a reason. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So
there
if
you
you're
go.
Okay with Linux Mint 18, then you probably shouldn't upgrade. So
there you go.
All right, so we have Ubuntu 17.04 to use the swap files instead of swap partitions. So do you use a swap partition?
Well, currently I do not. So I had read some time back that if you have an SSD drive, that it just wasn't healthy for the drive to have a swap partition. Plus, with the current system that I use now with 8 gigs of RAM and everything, I just bypass the swap file or swap partition altogether. But this is interesting what they're doing from a technical side. I wonder how that all works. That'll be something to kind of dig into.
Yeah, it'll definitely be something to look out for. I currently have a swap file, but it never gets used. So I think in the next install, it's going to be gone.
There you go. And I haven't noticed any ill effect from not having a swap file. I don't expect that I ever will see any ill effect. And for me, if there is that slightest possibility that it's going to affect my SSD drive at some point, and that kind of makes sense if you're constantly writing, back and forth to the drive. So,
well, how much memory do you have?
This particular drive is 120 gig. in space, but I've got 8 gigs of RAM, if that's what you were asking.
Yeah,
so with 8 gigs of RAM, yeah. So
okay.
I'd love to have 120 gigs of
128 gigs of memory. Probably never use that, but okay. Okay, so next up we have Canonical patches 15 Linux kernel vulnerabilities in all the supported Ubuntu OSes. Jeez, I can't even talk today. So basically they patched all of them, Xubuntu, Kubuntu, all of their distros, all the supported operating systems to fix security issues. And, I believe this includes the latest security problem with where if you were running a video game emulator, that it could compromise the system. So, I don't know if you want to jump through that many hoops.
Right. Well, someone will install the emulator just to prove out that there was a vulnerability there.
It's not wide. It's not as widespread as you would think. Just saying.
That's right. We've got it pretty good in the Linux community. I mean, yeah, we've had our share of vulnerabilities and security risk this year, but nothing in comparison to what Windows is continually facing. And I think it's like you said the other day, we were chatting, when it's bad enough that you have to spend 30 minutes reading through the updates to figure out if you want to do the updates on a Windows machine, that's pretty bad. You
spend more time on a Windows 10 machine trying to figure out if you should actually update it. That's if you care. But if you care about it, I mean, you're going to spend more time on a Windows 10 machine doing it than you are on a Linux machine nowadays. It's a sad state of affairs for a Windows user.
That's right. For Windows users. So.
All right, so that's it for the news, Rob. What do we got over at DistroWatch?
Oh boy, over at DistroWatch. Well, there's always something new at DistroWatch. So just in case anyone was interested, the number 1 ranked distribution on DistroWatch is Linux Mint. Can you believe it?
Wow, it's that static page coming through again.
That's right. I think they have something wrong with their HTML code, and Mint is just locked into the number 1 ranking, and they can't do anything about it, perhaps.
I'm wondering if anybody has ever seen it where Mint isn't at the top. Can we go back that far?
Well, we pick on Mint, but there's more to it. There have been some new releases. So the Alpine Linux project, which is an independent Linux distribution, it's developed with an embedded system and security in mind. They've released Alpine Linux 3.5.0. This release switches the distribution from using an OpenSSL security library to a LibreSSL security library. They also introduced support for ZFSS as the root file system, and they've upgraded many of the packages. Now, this is a distribution I haven't personally checked out, but if you've got interest there, now may be a good time to kind of dig in to see what they're doing new. Also, we have a new release of NethServer, so it's a server-related distro. They've got a snapshot release here, which is bringing them to version 7.3, release candidate 3, and this distribution is based on CentOS or CentOS. So they go on to say that they're increasing the flexibility for administrators. So if you are into servers, you may want to check this out. And then also we've got ExTix, which is they've announced a new release, a new version here. It's a Debian and Ubuntu based distribution, and they're at version 17.0, and they're shipping with the KDE desktop environment, and it will be available in 64-bit only, so no 32-bit. And I got to tell you, we're starting to see more and more releases that are 64-bit only. And I think they're leaving out a large part of their audience in doing that. What are your thoughts, Rocco?
Well, I think there's a lot of older machines still out there that rely on distributions that allow them to put 32-bit on. And I personally don't have a 32-bit machine, but you're kind of shrinking your base as far as who would try the distribution if you don't support 32-bit. I don't think we're quite there yet where you can cut it out.
I really don't either, because we've got to look at Linux as it's used worldwide. We can't just look and say, well, hey, here in the U.S., we're all running 64-bit architect. Well, that's fine, but we've got to look at the rest of the world where, that simply may not be the case. So I agree with you. I think we're just not there yet. So, and then some more release news here for those who are not faint of heart. Manjaro has an Alpha 1 release of version 17.0. So maybe that's what you should jump into, Rocco. What do you think?
Are you crazy, Rob? Manjaro 17 Alpha is not for the faint of heart. Just saying. I was crazy for accepting the distro challenge, but not that crazy.
There you go. And that's it for Distro Watch.
So, Rob, we have a special guest today. Who is it?
Yes, we do. The one and only Dolphin Oracle. He has agreed to join us on episode 2 of Destination Linux. And so we're going to have a chat here with Dolphin pertaining to their MX16 hot off the press or hot in the press MX16 Linux distribution. So we'd like to welcome Dolphin, one of the developers of MX16, to the show. Dolphin, how you doing?
Well, pretty good, guys. Thanks for inviting me on your show.
Absolutely. We couldn't resist after we saw the reviews from English Bob and Sudo Reboot.
Yeah, particularly Sudo was quite enthusiastic. I got to give the guy props. He's been cheerleading the last few days. If you watch his live feeds, he's game stuff on top of MX Linux. So I'm tickled to see that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, I actually installed MX16 2 nights ago, so I have to say that I was pretty impressed.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. It was it's 16 was built on top of MX15, MX16. Realistically, both based on Debian stable. So in a sense, 16 is just a natural continuation of 15, and it's got a lot of we've had really almost 2 years of fooling around with 15, and inevitably in the world of putting together your own distro, as soon as it's out the door, there's like 18,000 things you want to change or fix that you didn't know until, you can do all the beta testing you want to do, but until honestly, until a thing hits distro watch and all the distro hoppers out there grab onto it, you really don't know what the bug tweaks are, the tweaks you need until that mass of people hits it.
We don't have any idea what you're talking about, man.
No, you guys don't hop at all.
What is this distro hopper thing you speak of?
It's so anyway, so 15 in the past. Let me back up. In the past, MX has been considered by DistroWatch as a subset of Antics. And so we've had 2 releases. 14. Actually, 14 had a couple of point releases. 14.2, 14.3 were kind of bug fix releases. 14.4 brought the XFCE. What we have 4.12, 4.12 to, which isn't in Debian Jessie. Debian Jessie is still 14.10. We brought that to MX14, and so 15 was based on that. 16 is using that as well. And I kind of forgot where I was going with that. With that.
Well, that brings me to one of my questions. That's the first Debian-based distro that I've installed, and I hear all of these people. Actually, don't call me Lenny made a video of how easy it was to install the graphics drivers. Well, to be honest with you, I didn't even notice the difference as installing a Debian distro for the first time because it was so easy to install the drivers through MX16. So
that's fantastic.
I don't know how hard it is to install it on Debian, but all I know is I went in, I clicked the install the graphics drivers, the terminal came up, I entered my password, and it did everything I needed to do, and I rebooted it, and I was on the NVIDIA drivers.
Well, that's great. That was a very late add to the system. We were using a tool called, and we still are, it's still available on the distro, called SMXI. It's written by a guy who goes by H2. I don't know his actual name, but he's been, he used to be part of the Citrix project, or Seduction, I guess, project. And he, the Antix developers reached out to him, and he modified it so to work with Antics, being both Debian. Now, Antics tries to roll with what you call it, Debian testing beforehand. But a couple years ago, we had a push from the users in the Annex forums. Say, let's have a stable version, please. And when Zesty came out stable, they took the opportunity to do that. So H2, what that tool does, with SMXI and the subset of that, SGFXI, I think it is, that tool actually downloads the source code from NVIDIA and compiles it and runs it. But there's advantages and disadvantages. One, you get the absolute latest driver that way, but it doesn't install it in the Debian way. So you don't get the packages in the package managers. They don't show up anywhere. They're just installed. It's just like installing from source. So that's literally what it is. So Lenny said, come on, guys, fix something here. I mean, we were in RC1, man. I mean, we were ready to. We thought we were done, and he comes in and says, this needs to be easier because this is really ridiculous. It's like, okay, so actually we forked. It's not obvious from the tool, except if the guy who looks at it, who wrote it, happens to look at it. We actually forked the solid XK tool, which was written for Debian stable and Debian backports repos. That did not work real well with the way our repos are set up, so we actually had to redo a bunch of code on the inside and make it work with our tools. We actually wrote our own NVIDIA detect tool to figure out which NVIDIA driver to install, because we host all that stuff in our repo. So there's none of this going out into the, you don't have to enable Zesty backports or anything like that, which if you follow the Debian wikis, you do. And we also learned something about why. We couldn't figure out why it was so hard to install, why everybody was having trouble on Debian distributions. We found out why. Debian, like the big dog, Debian, configures its apt-get system so that it installs the recommended packages automatically. Most of your Debian-based distros, including MX and Annex is no exception, they don't, because it has the potential to pull in all sorts of things. So their wiki doesn't tell you to install things because it assumes that it's Debian and it installs all the recommends are going to happen. So the wiki, the Debian wiki, is not quite complete, depending on how the apt-get system is, the package management system is configured on the individual distro. We figured all that out, rewrote it's called DDM from Solid XK, the back end is anyway, and we rewrote a bunch of that so it just used our repo, and then it brought in the names of the packages and all that stuff that was particular to us. NVIDIA and Debian don't help because their detect tools, or actually the guys who wrote NVIDIA detect and Debian, assume that the only place the drivers are available is the Debian stable repo or Zesty backports or the backports repo. So if you have a newer version, say I think 340, I think is in. If you have, I think ours is 367, and we just brought over the 375s. It's in our test repo. It doesn't know where to get them. It tells you to go Zesty backports, but it doesn't know where to grab them. So anyway, Lenny was huge in that part because we actually delayed release for 2 weeks trying to put that back together. Because it was just kind of a big deal, and also, as we still have the ATI FGLRX driver that Ubuntu doesn't have because that support's been dropped out of the mainline Ubuntu's. It still works in Debian Zesty, so we host our own for that as well. It's not just NVIDIA.
How many people do you have involved on the development side? Because
there are 24 official dev team members. About 20 of those are active on a daily basis. And we also have a translation team that, I'll be honest, I don't know how many of them there are, but we're translated into about 12, 13 languages, our own tools. And those guys are great. It's run by a guy named Ol Giza. He's the project manager on that. And in fact, I just sent him 2 tools to do update translations on this morning, and hopefully that'll probably hit sometime tonight. It'll be up on TransFX. If you happen to watch my thank you video, I really went into the translators because those guys, I know coding is gobbledygook to a lot of people, but I don't speak anything but America, so I had so much respect for those guys. And then we have a project manager, Jerry, 3904 on the forums. He actually wanted to be here with me today, but unfortunately, family considerations.
Sure.
Something on the order of all of his grandchildren not able to leave him alone while he's on the microphone. So,
hey, we're down to earth here. We would have been okay with that.
Yeah. And actually, the main developer of MX, the lead developer, we call him on title. If you look at our about page, all these guys are on there. He's actually the same lead developer for Antix, so we're tight. It's not just that we're spun off. Oops, my screensaver kicked in. I should have disabled that. It's not just that we're based off Antix. It's that we're actually pretty tight with Antix. So our live USB system, all that stuff comes from Antix, and those guys are tweaking it right along as we developed, as we were getting MX16 out the door.
Well, I installed it this morning on an old piece of hardware that I forgot I had. It was an Asus transformer type laptop.
Oh yeah,
yeah, had the pin and everything. And so I was concerned from a driver standpoint with the older hardware, Core 2 Duo, with this touch screen, that everything completely out of the box worked. Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, the pin worked, everything.
Wow. Well, yeah, we're always curious about the touchscreen stuff because we don't have a whole lot of people just testing touchscreen. We have a couple, but not a lot. That's interesting. That's good. That's good to hear. You ought to see the laptop I'm running this on right now. I literally broke one of the hinges off the screen this morning, getting it out of the box. So I've got it like propped up on my desk here, taped together, trying to hold it together until we get through this podcast.
Well, if you like, if it's helpful at all, I can shoot you the exact model of the Asus, just so you know from a touchscreen perspective, what it is.
Yeah, send it to me. We'll throw it up in our wiki as something we know that works.
All right, very good.
That's fantastic. So, what'd you think?
Well,
from you yet? I hear you might do some reviews.
Absolutely. Yep. From time to time, Rocco twists my arm on a review every now and then and says, "Hey, you must do this."
I would never twist your arm.
Well, and that was my purpose. So I installed it in boxes for the first time. And so messed around with it a little there and immediately knew that I needed to get that on hardware and really put it through its paces and go through some of your MX tools. And yes, a review will be coming, and I want to spend time with the hardware and really dig in so that there's a lot there. I mean, there's so much more there than your typical distro.
Yeah, I don't know. We put a lot of work into it. It is not easy being Debian stable and yet having some of the newer stuff in there as well. We have, our repo is its own backport repo in a sense, if you want to consider it that way. We're not just grabbing packages from upstream and hosting them. We're actually, in most cases, we're actually recompiling them and repackaging them. In some cases, providing some tweaks and tricks. Sneak preview, we're working on a Compton manager at the moment.
Nice.
Nice.
Because a lot of folks are saying, hey, we're getting screen tearing on these Intel graphics drivers. Now, personally, I don't have a big problem with it, but a lot of people do. So we got together one night. I said, well, the LXQT guys have a configuration tool. I was like, okay. I said, we got Compton in the repository, fine. Let's get something put together. So we're kind of wrapping it all up in one spot. And a lot of our MX tools you mentioned are actually written in Qt, so it was kind of a natural fit to be able to drag over some stuff from the LXQT project. Yeah, we'll see. Well, we haven't even released it for testing yet, so we'll see how it goes there.
Well,
but
no, that's part of what I want to dig into before I get into the review, because I want to be able to speak to what these tools are exactly, how they work, what they do, from a new user perspective or someone trying to set up Linux, and depends on the hardware, of course, for the first time. I mean, I just see that as being huge.
Yeah, well, we focus a lot on the setup. One thing, I don't know, what's your chipset for your wireless?
Well, on this system, I'll have to go back and take a look at it just to see. I haven't used this hardware in so long, I just don't recall.
I got you. The reason I ask is we're actually, and you'll notice Lenny talked about it. We attempt to pre-configure the correct driver for your Broadcom wireless chip at the very first boot of the live media. You don't have to do anything to do it. By default, it actually uses the proprietary so-called WL driver, the Broadcom-STA,
right?
Whatever for the Manjaro guys. So for most of the time that part works fine. Now, occasionally you find a tool where it doesn't. A part where it doesn't. So we have a list of those tools, or the list of those parts, and we actually query that on your very first boot. And on the very first boot, it will say, okay, this is on our list. Let's switch it to one of the open source drivers. And we switch to the open source driver, and we do all the appropriate blacklisting and everything ahead of time. And if you know where to look, you can look at that stuff and see it done. Put a check file in /etc so that it doesn't have to do that again.
Awesome.
It only does it once. So, and that's been working pretty good. In 15, we actually had some parts that were left out, and actually, honestly, the Debian wiki and the WL wiki, or the Linux wireless wikis that we looked at, the pages, said that certain parts would work with WL, and they just don't. So we've actually tweaked it back so that it's back to using the open source drivers for those parts, even though upstream says they should work. I don't know. So we have a lot less complaints this go around than we did with 15 and with Annex 16. We had a couple of complaints with Annex 16. It actually uses the same tool. And then back to MX16. So far, we haven't had a single one. Knock on wood.
Well, I had the same experience as Lenny, where the Broadcom drivers were installed without me having to use the tool.
Yeah, well, that's great. Yeah, the Broadcom manager's there if you have to tweak something by hand, and it's also you can do it the way the wikis tell you, editing files and such. But it's we try to spend a lot of time making these drivers work, and that's one reason I'm glad to see the two video driver tools in here, because that we were lacking those, to be honest. It make it easy, and that's one thing the MX tries to do, is make setup easy.
Well, I also want to hand it to your artist within the group, because it's also very attractive. Well, and and it's consistent. The theming and everything is consistent throughout, and so you just get the feel that it's a polished OS. At first boot because of that. Well,
thank you. I appreciate it. The art team doesn't get enough credit sometimes. And we do have an art team. The art project manager. I am going to. It's a username. I'm going to completely butcher it. Asquith. Really took the bull by the horns. She was new this year. This dev cycle. And she really took the bull by the horns and kept everything solid. Now, we've got a couple of things theme-wise with dark themes. You probably know what I'm talking about. Things like Firefox,
right?
With the YouTube thing. There's a couple other tools. We're actually getting ready to release an update to our default lit tool that will include one more tweak for HexChat, because HexChat has the same problem. We didn't catch it in development. But so if you look at MX default look, which is on our welcome screen too, it has a couple of just quick and dirties where you can flip the panel horizontal, which isn't as easy as it sounds, because when you get into the XFCE settings, it's easy to do with their tool, but with the way our panel's configured, if you just flip it to horizontal, everything's mirrored. It's backwards, and that's not even strictly speaking true. So there's a lot of logic, and hopefully it works for people. I don't know. Anyway, it flips, and then we also have the Firefox tweak that forces a different theme on the internals of Firefox so that all those little text box fields work, because that's annoying when people want to find Run with the Dolphin and can't type his name into the channel.
Right.
Well, I actually watched your video on that, which was helpful, because as you said, within Firefox, it can get tricky. And so you were going through in the video showing, hey, I'm typing, but you don't see anything.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing about MX, guys, a couple of the guys are, myself included, but I haven't contributed much on that front, but a couple of the guys are trying to contribute some of this information back onto the Mozilla bug tracking system. So we've had some success with that back with 15 when we were working on the media playback, back when things were shipped back to HTML5 and Firefox's compatibility wasn't all there. We actually were going back and forth with Mozilla guys saying, hey, how do we get this fixed? And we do the same thing with XFCE. Toz, T-O-Z, I guess that's how you say his name. it's weird. You live in the Linux world and it's all online and you don't know how anything's pronounced.
That's right.
Don't get me started about
we know how to pronounce every name here at Destination Linux.
I bet you do. Probably have a whole team of people working on pronunciation.
So, what are the pros and cons to using Debian for an end user?
Well, that's a fair question. Okay, so Debian doesn't change much. Okay, and when they say stable, they kind of mean it. They release the thing, and except for security fixes, that's it. You don't get it. I mean, if you enable the Jesse backports repo, they even tell you that you might break your system someday doing this. You know,
oh my gosh,
because they're not as vetted as much as their main repo. You consider Debian test. We all talk about Debian testing. Oh, it's you see the Debian based distros that are based on Debian testing. You're like, oh, we're based on Debian testing. We have more up-to-date packages. That thing changes a lot, okay? And testing doesn't change as much as SID and unstable. But stable, to the user out there that looks to Ubuntu LTS or something like that, that's where the Debian stable guys, that's where you really want to be. If you were a Windows user and you ran Windows XP for 12 years, through multiple releases of Windows, I bet you didn't upgrade Microsoft Office one time through that entire mess because it costs money, right? But us Linux open source guys, we always want, it's all free, so we want the latest every time it comes down. Well, as soon as you have to pay money for it, all of a sudden people run XP for 20 years, right?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, so if you're that mentality where you just want it on your computer and it just works forever, that's where Debian stable is going to do you good. Now, obviously, in the desktop world, Linux is a tiny piece, right? In servers where stability counts for even more, Debian's actually got a pretty sizable share. And Debian is a true free foundation-based group that doesn't have a billionaire backing it.
Right.
Some heroes I can mention, which I have.
And a committee to go along with it?
Yeah, the foundation committee for Debian can be fun and interesting. The IRC channels can be exciting on occasion, around election time.
But I noticed that you have, the latest packages on certain things. Like you have the latest Firefox. Is that from your repos?
Yes, that is from our repo. We bring the source from Mozilla, recompile it. It's got some tweaks for MX so that we don't have that annoying. If you install it yourself from Mozilla's packages, you get this annoying little update notice that you can't do anything with because it's upstream. Usually there's a whole lot of user feedback. We modify that so that that message doesn't pop up. There's a few other things we change. But yes, it's hosted in our things. I'm pretty sure it's the same deal with Thunderbird. I'm fairly certain Thunderbird is hosted on our repos too. Of course, Debian now uses Firefox. In fact, if you install Iceweasel, you actually get the extended support release of Firefox, which that's available in the repo if somebody wants it. But if our Firefox is our Firefox, it's in our repo, and that's how we do it. We went ahead and pulled in LibreOffice 5 this time too, which you won't find in Debian stable. It's in Jesse backports. It's in the backports repo, but that gets to be a hassle for updates as things go. Because the backports repo, I'm not going to get into that, but let's just say even if you have the thing enabled, you're not quite done yet.
Okay.
Because they use special priority settings to keep it from wrecking people's system.
Is the plan to kind of continually build on the repo and add as you get requests? And
yes, in fact, we have a package request forum, a thread in our forums. And, you'd be surprised how quick the package team gets together and pulls those packages together. It's one reason we have OBS Studio.
Right.
One reason we have Simple Screen Recorder. There's a whole host of things that we have in there that just aren't available elsewhere, or that we have more up-to-date than than Debian upstream. Some things don't matter a whole lot. But some things do. And that's what we like to have, is the things that matter.
Well, and those are the key things. And, as soon as I say this, you'll have 10 people that raise their hand and say, what about some obscure software package that you've never heard of. I use that all the time.
I think there's been 4 package requests this week so far, packages I didn't know what they were. But somebody's putting it together for him. There's action.
Somebody uses it.
A couple this morning, so we'll throw it in our repo. At one time, we were kind of hoping to make the claim that we have more backports than backports. I don't think we're quite there yet, but we're moving right along.
Well, I got to ask you, because really for me, I was kind of caught off guard, to be upfront about it, with MX16. It's like one day, I'm browsing the channels that I typically watch on YouTube, and all of a sudden, here is, to use English Bob's words, the distro of 2016. And I was like, okay, now number one, how did I miss this? That's my first question. But you guys have got to have been, number one, happy to see the response. And did it kind of hit you out of the blue? Was this a surprise to you that all of a sudden there's all this activity and,
Okay, the level of activity, yes. I mean, we were behind the scenes. We were making plans to try to get people to review MX16. What can we do to get this on there? Now, one of the reasons why we've flown under the radar a little bit is that we have been, not by us, we've always considered ourselves a distro, but DistroWatch considered us they have this policy. I don't know if a lot of people know this, because you got to kind of read through the DistroWatch rules and submissions and stuff to know this. Just waking up one day and throwing a spin together and calling yourself a distro doesn't get you and just listed to DistroWatch. There's a lot of stuff. Now, there's some shortcuts. You can buy a banner ad for $400 or whatever it is, and bam, you're a distro on DistroWatch. Okay, I got no problem with that. That is
Wait, is that how Linux Mint got? No, I'm just saying.
Well, Linux Mint is Linux Mint. What we did, we went the longer route, which is if you're active and going for 2 years, then they will spin you off into the thing. So, but we needed listed. So we said, okay, we are a spin of Antics. And so we got our announcements on DistroWatch under the Antics moniker, which did cause some hiccups, because then you clicked on Antics and you ended up getting all the Antics pictures and stats instead of the MX. And then they started flipping it back and forth, and it got complicated. This year, they actually called us and they said, hey, you guys have been around for a while. You want a listing? And we said, nah, we're okay. No, we said, yes, list us, of course. So we got listed at the, I think our initial listing was something like 8,227, down at the bottom. So far down, you can't even see it. This morning, I think we're up in the 70s now, because it's on the 6-month weighted average. So there's nothing like release day to help those numbers,
Right.
So that's why we've been under the radar, is we just haven't been a lot of visibility. But I cannot believe. Now, I've been following Steve, English Bob, for a long time. He's commented back and forth. Back when he went through an MX15, 14 phase back in the day, and we went back and forth a lot on the YouTube channels. And then Lenny got a hold of it, and he actually joined our forums. Kind of, he does this just so you distro watchers out there know this. He joins your forum incognito. And but he reviews your distro, okay? And so he started making helpful comments on things, and now the guys are looking at it, and I can't believe the number of people that looked at it. We've also have a online reviewer who has taken an interest. I don't know how to say his name either. Dedi Modo. I butchered the name. But there's a link on the MX Linux DistroWatch page to one of his older reviews. And he actually interviewed us as well for his written blog not too long ago. So, I'm surprised. I mean, I'm happy. I think we got a great distro. Obviously, I've been running Antics and/or MX since 2008. For Antics and MX since it started. I was shocked and amazed, and I'm glad people are taking a look at it.
So obviously, you've got some kind of some form of way to track downloads or something. I'm guessing or do you?
Yes, to a point. Our main site, download site, SourceForge. We can track that fairly easily. The torrents we can track fairly easily, thanks to Linux Tracker. Our mirror sites are less easy to track. And then also there is a spattering of people trading their own torrents. The distro launch torrents we don't have. They're hosting us right now. We don't have those numbers, although I imagine they'd provide them to us if we asked. In our first week, we were something like 10,000. I don't know where we are right now, but we're really getting the BitTorrents in particular are really impressive for Europe in particular. I don't know what it is about Poland. You guys love 32-bit. Whatever. I'm happy for you guys. I think the United States is almost 2-1 64-bit, and then you get out into Europe, and all of a sudden the 32-bit is very, very popular. And I think that's something to think about for guys out there dropping 32-bit support. There's a lot of people that still want it. That's
exactly what I was going to say is, and you know it immediately if you go into the forums, you'll see people saying, what? No 32-bit? So I think it was a good move on your part to not follow that trend of dropping 32-bit.
Now, one thing we did do with our 32-bit release, and it's not, a lot of people don't realize this. There's really two different ways you can run 32-bit. And you got to have the right kernel. You got to have either a PAE or a non-PAE. A non-PAE will work all the time, but if you have more than 4 gigs of RAM, it's not going to do any good. We actually include both kernels on our 32-bit ISO. It takes it slightly longer to install Grub that way, but when you choose at boot which kernel you want to boot, in the very first boot menu, it's going to say PAE or non-PAE. You choose that one to go, and when you do the install, it carries that over, and whatever you chose at boot, that's what you're going to get. So that is, and actually, I want to give a shout out to the Annex team. I have a very small part in the Annex dev team, very, very tiny part, but except as an enthusiastic user. That live USB system that they have is out of this world. It really is. I almost ran, if I didn't have to run my work computer doing actual work stuff right now, I was actually going to run this podcast, this interview off the live stick. Just so I have a live stick all set up, ready for it. I mentioned in my videos that I don't need, a lot of times I do a video, I'll do the editing, I'll do the capture, I'll do everything off the live USB, and nobody in YouTube land can tell the difference. That's how good that live USB system is. And when you select the options, or you install an app on the live USB and then run our installer, guess what shows up on your installed system is whatever app you had. So there's a lot of neat tricks that the live USB system has. And if you think you running live USB is slow, you haven't run it on a USB 3 with a USB 3 device. I'm telling you, we can outrun some spinning hard drives for sure. Maybe not SSDs, but we'll outrun a spinning hard drive.
I saw your video on that as well, which I kind of stepped back a minute because it's something I've never even thought about doing. Okay. Yeah. It's just, and so when you laid it out like, you can run this thing.
Yeah. Here. This is why you might want to live USB. This is a Lenovo S21E. And I talk about this thing on the channel and I talk about it in the forums. It has a 16 gigabyte. I won't call it an SSD because I think it's actually eMMC RAM, flash RAM. This is
really cheap. Yeah, the really cheap.
Oh my God, this thing is. I mean, it's great because it's light and all that stuff, and the battery life's ridiculous on it. It's got one USB 3 port, and right there is what runs this computer. It's 120. It's 128 gig USB 3. That it boots. I don't know, 12 seconds.
Wow.
Off the USB, and that's with my customizations. Only 2 gigs of RAM on that computer, and I use it for, I use it for a lot of stuff. I don't use it for anything heavy duty because it just doesn't have the power. But it's nice when you just need something, you want to browse the web on your way to work or whatever. It's a nice little device.
Well, and
it has a tiny, tiny hard drive, and it's just ridiculous.
And there are places in the world where something like that would be super handy. We take a lot for granted here in the U.S. as far as what we have laying around at our disposal and things like that. So,
absolutely. And actually, that's the Antics project's primary focus is older machines. MX is not so much, but Antics itself. I mean, Antics still ships on a CD for that reason. CD-sized ISO. People are like, oh, that's quaint, your CD size. Well, yeah, but if you leave off, GNOME or KDE or even XFCE, to be honest, You can still cram LibreOffice onto a 700 meg download. You know, it ain't easy to do it.
So, what do you see future-wise? I mean, where do you go from here, I guess?
Well, funny you say that. We've already started talking about MX17, which will be stretch-based once Debian Stretch goes to stable. Yeah, we're just going to keep making it better. We want to climb the DistroWatch chart. We want more people on our forums. It's really coming alive. You know, unlike a lot of projects, we inherited our community. The community is older than the project, a lot older than the project. There was you may have heard of it, Mepis. Okay, so the community used to be called the Mepis community, and the Mepis community ran Simply Mepis. Simply Mepis was a commercial project, you know, like SUSE or Red Hat. A guy named Warren. His first name's Warren W. I forget his last name, Woodard, I think. He was running Mepis LLC, and this was his product. He sold support. He sold all sorts of stuff for it. And if you were a subscriber, you got early releases and betas and stuff. And it was pretty cool. And then one day he just said, you know what? I'm not making any money with this. I'm going to do something else. And so the Mepis name's his. The Mepis LLC is still out there. He does patent something. I don't know. He's still out there. So the Mepis community was trying to decide what they're still supporting the last beta release of Mepis 12, which people ask me, how long are you going to support MX for? As far as I can tell, we never stop. Mepis 12 is still being supported. We just quit supporting Mepis 8. That's how. Wow. And yes, that's 2008. So that was kind of crazy. But so the community said, well, let's get something put together. Let's do something else. And a couple of the guys started saying, well, KDE's too heavy for a lot of our computers. Let's try something XSFE. And it kind of just started being a dream project. And then I believe Antti from the Antix project got with him and said, you know what? Antix at once upon a time was actually based on Mepis. And that's where they got their original live system, which I think actually is sort of kind of related to Knoppix, if you want to go long in the tooth. All that's different now, but that's how it was back then. And so they started building this idea for an XFCE-based distro. This is the primary reason why our panel is vertical. Is because the original idea was going to be on a netbook, and not a netbook like this thing, which at least has a real monitor. Those half-size monitors from a few years ago, the 1024 by 600 monitors. There's no vertical space on those. So where do you do with the panel? You throw it off to the side. And so that's kind of where this started. And then it just kind of became our look. So we kept it. 14 didn't have an option to swing it horizontal. 15 brought the option for horizontal. Because people are like, we love your distro, but we hate your panel.
Well, and you run into that, you take a look at Unity, for example, and people just don't like it when you're locked in a certain way, know.
Yeah, how long has it taken them to make that panel switchable on Unity? We did it in a year. I don't know.
You mean the most popular distribution ever?
That's right. Well,
that's why Unity's why there's a Ubuntu Mate. That's all I'm saying.
Right. You're right.
Well, there's a lot of distros out there, and at some point, as you start looking at the number of distributions and releases over a year's time frame, at some point the lines start to blur a little and things start to become kind of mono, if you will. And the first thing I noticed, again, I loaded this first in boxes, but immediately you see that, no, this is different. And it's not different, as in, hey, we're going to put a pink wallpaper on here with a purple panel. It's different for real world reasons, with your tools, with your theme tool, the live system that you've talked about. This is the first time this year that I've had any type of discussion about, running a Linux OS in a true live environment like you described earlier.
No, what's funny is I did most of the this dev cycle, I was mostly involved in a couple of the MX tools, building the MX tools. I did all of that on the live USB. Out of necessity on one trip, because I couldn't. I mentioned this computer is falling apart. Literally, I left. I forgot it. I was on a business trip and I forgot the thing, so I had to use my work computer. Well, I can't install anything on my work computer. That's a no. So, hey, I got this live USB. Let me try that. So I actually ran most of the dev cycle just running live USB on the work computer.
Crazy.
I mean, it's remarkable. People don't give it enough credit. And I can take that thing out, pop it in another machine, and all my apps are there. KDN Live's there. Everything's there. We tried. You mentioned things blurring together, and that's one reason we've kept the vertical panel, because at least it's different for an XFCE distro. You notice there's not a lot of text on our panel. It's mostly graphical, icons and such. Part of that's because it's vertical. Part of it's just because it's a market distinction. Our art team actually went out of their way. This is like the 6th icon set we vetted for this for MX, because and there's a lot of and the Faenza set's still available on the ISO, because we pull an icon say like, oh, Mint's using that one, or oh, Manjaro's using that one, or whatever. It's like, we don't want that. We don't want to be the same. And so part of that's superficial, but part of it is it's your luck. People are you click on the homepage, that's what they see.
And it all comes together too, because if you lose focus in one small area, people pick up on that. And having reviewed quite a few distros over the last year, it's been refreshing to see the amount. As an example, I'm going to throw out Elementary OS. Mm-hmm. That level of attention to detail, that's what I'm talking about. And it shows once you start digging in and you start opening things up and you go into various settings, that's when you realize, okay, someone's really done their homework here. They didn't just, grab a theme and, throw it on here.
Yeah.
So that's the level that I've seen in the limited amount of time. So like I said, I want to spend more time digging through things, but it shows.
Well, I'm not going to say there's not a couple foibles in there, but we try to hide them well. And I'll be honest, an open source OS. Hey, you think Windows doesn't have any problems? Do a quick search on I can't find my shared drive.
Yeah.
On Google and check out those threads. That's exciting. But yeah, so we include a lot of stuff that you won't see in a normal XFCE. Obviously, XFCE 4.12 and Debian Stable is kind of I don't know that anybody's doing that right now but us. Not that anybody beside us nerdy folks would care a whole lot what the version number is. You can't see my panel right now, but I've got Dropbox running. I've got a little USB unmounter tool running that we wrote. These are the little things that other distros don't have. I mean, anybody can throw the XFCE unmount plugin on the panel, but the panel plugins are big, right? I mean, does anybody really like those great big panel plugins? I do.
Right.
So you throw the smaller ones in the notification area, and you do what you do. We've taken a lot of time. I'm glad people are noticing. It means a lot to us. During 14, we had like 3 reviews, and with the exception of whatever, I think he was Puppy Linux or Linux Help Guy or English Bob or whatever you want to call him, Steve. No one else was really excited about it, and he was. And so we listened a lot to him. We're doing the same thing with the other reviewers. Dini Moto was really hard on us on our aesthetics. We focused on functionality, and MX14, I'll be honest, if you want to have fun, pull out a screenshot of MX14 and put it up against MX15 and 16. It is. I didn't think it was that bad when we released it. It's butt ugly. Okay, it was terrible. It was terrible. And 15 and 16 are so much better. 15 was good. 16 is even better. So I'm glad people are looking. We paid a lot of attention to detail. We actually have, we're not a boutique distro. This is a community that wanted an OS,
right? And
we're trying to give it to them. And I'll tell you what, the Mepis guys. Or now the MX community, because we just rebranded. They're a hard bunch. I mean, if you don't have it right, they will let you know. There isn't any. Well, here's how I fixed it. This is why did you release it this way? You need to fix this, and you need to fix it now. And we love that about them. They're great.
But it's the little things that make up the distro. You know, we always we'll talk about Linux Mint and things like that, but it's the little things that they put into the distro that you don't really even notice until you notice it, that make it a whole distro that is usable for everybody. Yeah. And that's what is in your distro, where there's so much attention to detail that you don't really notice it until you start digging into all of the MX tools, all of the little tweaks. And that attention to detail is what makes it really awesome.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Thank you for saying that. We that's been a goal.
Well, if you spent any time back in the Windows Vista days trying to switch to Linux and getting your Broadcom drivers to work, then you totally 100% appreciate what you're doing. So,
dude, I was compiling my Railing drivers on Ubuntu 6.10, man. That was, you want to talk about hard. That was ridiculous.
Oh, well, this has been awesome, and we look forward to I had one other question for you, and I need to dig in myself on this. I guess I need to go read a little more. Any plans for like KDE as a desktop or anything like that?
I'm glad you mentioned this. Now, we have a user, Steve-O, and actually he's on our dev team. He's one of our lead packagers, and he's active on the Debian forum, so you'll see him over there too. He has his own KDE spin, and it has not been updated for MX16. I expect it will after the dust settles from 15. Lenny actually looked at it. Don't call me Lenny. Actually looked at it a couple months ago because he was like, "Oh, they didn't even release this." Well, yeah, officially it's a spin. Okay, but in acknowledgement of the fact that the MEPIS community, the original MEPIS distribution was KDE based. We do have a separate KDE. We call it MX Modified. Okay, and it's there's a KDE forum in there and all that. But I suspect he'll probably update that again. And if he doesn't, there is enough interest in the community for it that somebody probably will. And what can they use to do that? Check out my latest video, MX Snapshot.
Awesome.
Which lets you take an installed system, customize, rewrap it up into an ISO with all the live goodness that you get on the original ISO.
Awesome.
You can make your own spin. And about, I just ran it the other night. It took like 20 minutes to run off my custom ISO with all my video and dev tools on it so that I could just stash it in the safe in case the house burned down, Because that's what's important, my live USB.
I'm thrilled to hear that, and Rocco is as well, I'm sure, because we're both KDE fans, and if you've been watching what's going on with Plasma, I mean, every time you turn around, there's a new point release. We're up to 5.8 point.
Yeah, I mean, they're really moving now. Plasma's really, really moving. But our team's relatively small, and we have to be focused to produce the product that we produce. And
Absolutely.
That's when you get into a group where they got 12 different spins, unless you've got the people to back that up. If you do, great. If you don't have the people to back that up, you can really dilute your experience in a hurry doing that.
Well, and I've experienced that. So you'll see, you'll see a release, and like you said, you've got community releases and things like that. And you may have, for example, I'll use Manjaro for an example. You may have a great experience with their XFCE proper, and then you jump over to KDE and realize it's not at the quality level because it didn't have the attention to detail, and all the quirks weren't worked out.
That's the thing. It's the quirks. It's the little itty bitty things that gnaw at you.
That can drive you nuts.
Oh yeah, it's just the little things that Ubuntu calls them the paper cuts. It's the 1,000 little things that are wrong that they try to fix occasionally. Just try to squash them.
And with the amount of choice that Linux has, that's why people don't stick with distros. If there's certain little things that are going to get at you, they're just going to go and get another distro. It's no big deal because there's so much choice out there. That's why it has to be right.
Yeah. Well, it's, if you got 1,000 choices to choose from, you might as well find one that works for you out of the gate. Of course, I want everybody to use MX Linux because, that's just how it is. But But there's a lot of videos out there.
I've enjoyed watching your videos because your enthusiasm shows up, in your videos, and it's just nice to see, that, hey, here's someone involved who's taking the time to kind of go through and step through some of these things. Plus, you're enthusiastic about it, of course, and so that's a fun combination as well.
The community is a great bunch of guys, and they've taught me what I know about Linux. These guys, and originally the videos were my way of giving back to the community. Now I'm a little more involved with the dev stuff, but back then when I first started, I was just an enthusiastic user, and it kind of took off from there. So, it's a small channel when you're not doing distro reviews. Not a whole lot of people come find you, but I tell you what, I've got 80 more subscribers in the last 2 weeks, so I'm perfectly happy with that.
That's great. That's great. Well, Dolphin, man, thank you so much. I know you've got a million other things to probably got some Christmas shopping left to do if you're like us.
Yeah, it's USB sticks for everybody.
There you go.
With MX16 installed.
OSes.com, people.
Yeah, I was going to say on the naughty list, I'm going to run out and buy copies of Windows 10 for all the people on the naughty list for a gift.
That's like coal, yeah.
That's like the lumps of coal, exactly.
Oh my God, my dad! His Windows 10 just did this big update, and it broke his antivirus, and he's just so mad about it. and I'm doing a video in his kitchen one day because I'm traveling. I was traveling. I was staying at the house, staying with him, and I'm doing a video at the kitchen table, and he's like, "What are you running over there? Because that looks like it didn't break."
Oh, those are fun stories, aren't they?
Oh, I love them.
All right. Well, we appreciate it. Look forward to anything going on in the future, and we'll continue to watch your channel. So where do we find you on YouTube?
At YouTube, I am youtube.com/runwiththedolphin. Just look for the dolphin with the sneakers, and you got me. And then, of course, the mxlinux.org and antics.freeforums.org is where we hang out on the Annex boards. So come check us out.
Awesome. Will do. Thanks a lot.
Hey, guys, thanks for having me on. Peace.
Thanks, Dolphin. Merry Christmas, man.
Thank you, guys.
That leads us into our YouTube comments section, which we're going to discuss the results of the distro challenge. Do you have a drum roll sound effect?
No, but I'll have one ready for you next week.
Oh, man, you're killing me. Okay, so... All right, so for Pure Arch, we have 5 votes. Then we have a Arch Anywhere KDE for 1 vote. Then we have for Manjaro, and we'll tally these up, we have 8 total votes for Manjaro, depending on which desktop environment, KDE, Deepin, OpenBox, and XFCE. So 8 votes for Manjaro. Rounding out the list, we have Antergos KDE with 2, 1 for Antergos regular, just any version. Then we have 1 for SUSE. Then we have 1 for, actually we have 2 for Arch i3WM.
Hey.
And 1 for Zorin OS, 1 for Ubuntu, and 1 for Gecko KDE. So, what do you think?
Wow. So it sounds like if you're just looking at the base OS, Manjaro wins.
It looks that way, Rob. 8 votes for Manjaro. Now,
well, you could have done a lot worse. Manjaro's
I could have.
Not a bad. Yeah, that's right.
So, which desktop environment, though? Because there's so many votes.
Well, I've got something that's going to put us over the edge. So, our friend Matt Cross.
Oh yeah, did you say he was our friend?
Yes. Yes, he is. Matt's a friend.
Yep.
And so, Matt proposed to us a little distro challenge. In fact, he released a video this week and kind of proposed a 3-person distro challenge. And so he included you in that, and his vote for you was Manjaro Deepin.
He was the one Manjaro Deepin, yes.
That's right. And so I'm going to help Matt out, and I'm going to kind of push it over the edge just a little bit, and I'm also going to throw in my vote for Manjaro Deepin.
You're killing me, man. You are absolutely killing me.
So, You, my friend, for the distro challenge, will be tasked with running Manjaro Deepin for 1 week, and I will say this, you could do a lot worse.
I could do a lot worse. But I could be, I don't know, maybe in your spot.
That's right. That's why I say you could do much worse, because Matt challenged me to run Ubuntu proper or Ubuntu Unity, because he knows how much I just love running Unity as a desktop environment. So I can just say this, over the weekend, I'm going to be digging into every tweak and theme and anything you can do to make Unity more usable.
Just keep that PPA list I sent you handy, because you're back to them already.
You got it. You got it. I'm so glad this is only a week.
It's only a week. And let me just say that this is the last distro challenge that I'm going to take for a while, okay? Because I have to get back to stability here and sanity. So
Yes. That's right. That's exactly right. So I'm with you on that. So this will be our last distro challenge for some time. Maybe we'll do another one much, much later in 2017. Who knows? But for now, that's it. Now, back to the order of business with Matt's distro challenge. So
he did challenge us. So what's that mean, Rob?
that means he's included in this. So that
does.
means we've got to pick for him, and I've got something in mind that involves, the time frame of about 1998 or so.
I love it.
So we're going to see just how much Matt wants to come through with this challenge, because basically it's if he decides to accept it from this point on, right?
Yep, he's got to accept the challenge, or I ain't installing Deepin. I'm just saying.
That's right. That's right. So here's what I'm going to throw out. It's on the table right now. I'm throwing it out.
It's out there for everybody to see. What is it?
For everybody to see. Now, before I announce it, Matt, your challenge is in the top 20 of DistroWatch, my friend.
Could do a lot worse.
Absolutely. We're not going, down to number 47 or 53 or anything like that. So for you, Matt, the challenge is React OS.
Yes, I love it. We needed a drum roll. For crying
Yes,
out
we
loud.
did. Yes. So React OS for Matt if you decide to accept the challenge. So we'll just see. We'll hear back from Matt, I'm sure.
I'm sure we'll hear.
That's right. So we'll see how it goes. And I think it would be fun if, here we are at the holidays, so I'm sure you're probably taking some time away from YouTube and your channel, and I'll probably do the same. But it would be fun if somewhere maybe along the way in the middle of the week or something like that, we could release a video just kind of sharing a little update about how things are going. And I kind of have an idea what you'll talk about with the Deepin desktop, and I figure you'll kind of know what I'm talking about with the Ubuntu desktop. But what I really look forward to seeing is Matt's video.
Yes, I love it. I think it's awesome.
So therein lies the challenge. It's back in. We've thrown the ball back over to Matt, so it's up to him.
There you go. So that wraps up the YouTube comments. And so, Rob, what's going on over at your channel?
Well, I don't know if you caught this or not. I've got a new cool Linux Tools episode up, and it's one that you may want to check out, and it's called Vocal. Have you seen that video?
No, I haven't seen the video. So what's Vocal?
Okay. Well, Vocal is a podcast app for the Linux desktop.
Nice.
So here's what's cool about it. It is developed by the same team who is working on Elementary OS.
Which means that it'll probably look good.
It looks good. Clean, simple interface. It's got one drawback, and you'll see I mentioned this in the video. You cannot do a search to add your podcast. You actually have to add an RSS feed, or you can do an import from a file where you have done an export from, say, iTunes or Gpodder, or an RSS feed. But beyond that, clean, simple interface. I think you'd like it. You can select to automatically update the podcast. So, of course, I put Destination Linux in there as the first podcast. So as we release new episodes, that will automatically update and download. You can choose to automatically download as well. So got that posted. You may want to check that out. And then, of course, based on our discussion here with Dolphin, I intend to do a thorough review of MX16. So, what you got going on?
Well, I haven't been doing a whole lot on the channel because of being in the GNOME world. And I got to say that I don't, like the more I use GNOME, the less I hate it. We'll just leave it at that. So, I mean, no, is it something for me to use all the time? No, probably not, because I need certain things. But when I do switch, I am going to miss certain things about GNOME, and especially the full screen launcher. I have tried to train myself to not use the extensions as far as the menus to make it look like other distributions. I've been training myself to use I do use the keyboard a lot, so hitting the Windows key.
Super
I hit the
key, my friend. Super key.
Super key. And opening the full screen launcher. So that I will miss. But it's been a good experience overall. So I haven't done a whole lot on the channel itself, but I will be posting the next video about Manjaro Deepin.
Manjaro Deepin. Interesting. That'll be fun. Well, listen, I hope you have an awesome Christmas. This is going to wrap up episode 2 of Destination Linux. And so to all of our viewers and fans of our channels and things like that and friends, wish you all a very, very Merry Christmas and a safe and Happy New Year as well.
Yep. Merry Christmas, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks. Check you later.
See you, man. Now, if you're running out of time, dude, stop it.
I'm playing with you.
I know you are. Stop it. You're such a loser. Okay, if you're running out of time, man, we can do this tomorrow morning or something. That's up to you.
Well, no, I think, let me just, because it didn't take us but 15 minutes.
Yeah.